Project 25 was born out of the obsession that we have of figuring things out. Honestly, being 25 is weird because we either pursue certain goals without questioning if they're what we truly want, or we're not sure what direction to follow, and that leaves us with a lot of uncertainty. I'm Andrea Juarez, I'm 25, and I decided to ask my family members, friends, and people I admire about their experiences being 25, what they did, what were their beliefs, what they've learned, and what's their advice for the new generation of 20 somethings. There is a lot to live and learn, and I believe that by listening to others, we can reflect and learn a little bit more about ourselves and think about what we want for our present and for our future. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into a new episode of Project 25. Today's guest is Linda Espinosa Valencia. She is 42. She was born in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico. She immigrated to Canada in 2005 after marrying her current partner, Steve Ross. She became a dual Mexican-Canadian citizen in 2011, and she has lived in Calgary, Alberta, San Jose, California, Seattle, Washington State, and currently she lives in Milton, Ontario. Linda is a go-getter who loves to make a difference in people's lives. And although Linda's career has been mostly in the business and marketing field, her time living in the US was very transformative and she discovered a new career path. The past 3 years, Linda has transitioned from a business strategist to a justice, equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion consultant. She has never been more motivated at work as she is now. She is a volunteer mentor at the Black Professionals in Tech Network, and she is starting a Latinx organization to increase visibility and representation of Latinx people in Canada. Linda is very proud of her roots. She tries to visit her hometown at least once a year and learn more about her culture. She loves to spend time with her family going for hikes or visiting new places in Ontario. She loves unlearning and learning history, learning about people's experiences, especially those that are very different from hers. She loves dancing and listening to music. Welcome, Linda. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for inviting me to be part of this project.
You're most welcome. It's a pleasure for me as well. So, Linda, I wanted to ask, I already have your name and your age. So I meant to ask, what is your title or how would you describe yourself?
I don't want to start with my title, actually, because I think that's very capitalist. Well, I'm human, woman, she, her, ella, pronounce. I have a beautiful family. I'm a mom of two. And what I do is I do justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility consultant. And that's what I do. I'm a consultant, and I work with organizations, either private or public, to start their what we call EDI journey, and to start in their organizations.
That's awesome. And Linda, what did you do when you were 25? So were you studying, were you working, or what were your hobbies back then?
So at 25, I was just moving back from Canada the first time around. I lived in Halifax, Nova Scotia for 6 months. I was working a little bit there in English school for, like just students coming around the world to study English. I was doing the marketing for them. And I recently moved back to Mexico because I found out that I couldn't stay and I didn't want to stay without papers and things like that. So I decided to move back to Mexico. And I was working for actually a pretty big company in Mexico called Cervecería Cuauhtémoc Moctezuma, who are the makers of a beer like Sol and Dos Equis. And I was the marketing coordinator for the southeastern states in Mexico. And I was recently engaged with my Canadian boyfriend at the time, and now we're married for 16 years. I was preparing a wedding. We were married in Mexico, which was a big wedding.
That's really awesome. And Linda, when you were 25, what was your vision of the world? So were you religious or did you have a big belief? What did you think back then?
So back then I was somewhat religious. I well actually was married through the Catholic Church, but I already was kind of like questioning if I really wanted to be part of the Catholic Church, if that really went with my values, or I was just questioning a lot of things. Like there were a lot of things that I wasn't agreeing with, and there are a lot of news. When I was in Canada, like I felt that I got more news about what was happening in the Catholic Church as a whole than I did ever in Mexico. Like nobody talks about, well, maybe now it's different, but back then, like nobody talked about anything bad about the Catholic Church. And then when you get out of Mexico and you hear all these different things happening, you're like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I part of this? So that was definitely questioning back then. My favorite things to do while I was there was definitely hanging with my girlfriends. I have very nice group of dear friends that I know since middle school. So hanging out with them, and then going out for dinner with my fiance at the time and my family, visiting new restaurants. Took some salsa lessons because my fiance wanted to learn dancing before the big wedding. Yeah, so it was a very individualistic vision of the world for sure. Like what I wanted, where I wanted to go. And as definitely a very like meritocracy. So like yes, if you work hard, if you work really hard, you will get there. There's nothing that will stop you if you actually put on the work, which now I know that that's not the truth. There's a whole system that actually can prevent, especially people of color and marginalized communities, to actually be successful and create wealth and all that. So, but yeah, at 25 I was not aware of any of that.
Ignorance is a bliss sometimes.
Yes.
Knowledge is power, but kind of a burden, I would say.
Definitely.
And Linda, so I meant to ask, so you're a consultant, but now, like, besides that, so what do you do? So, and like, you can talk about your work as a consultant, but from you were 25 to this day, like, what has changed, either in the world and in yourself, in what you do, in what you believe?
A lot of things have changed. The world has changed. I have changed. After marrying my husband, like we moved to Canada. And after Canada, after 6 years in Calgary, we moved to San Jose, California. And that was around the time that Trump got elected. And that just was a complete change for me and how I view the world. And it was because I realized that like a lot of the rhetoric that he was spewing against, Mexicans and Latinos, Latinx people, like we kind of believe that, like we're kind of fed that same rhetoric in our countries, like for the people who unfortunately have to leave their countries and go work in the fields in the United States, like we're told that these people are like, why would they leave? Why do they go and be treated like trash in the United States? Like, why would you want to do that ever? And obviously our own privilege doesn't let us see that obviously they're not they don't having good opportunities. Their kids are in danger for the violence that's happening in their hometowns and things like that. But we don't see that because we are living in our own privilege. So we just see that they're being treated bad, and why would you ever do that? Because they have no choice. So this thing that, oh, they're bad people, they're rapers, they're criminals and things like that, we believe that too, when it's not true. It's not true. But I didn't actually, when I moved to the US, I never wanted to be compared to those people. I said, I'm not like them. I'm not like them. I'm here legally. I'm here, I'm educated. I speak English pretty well, all these things. So like it kind of like confronted my own racism thanks to Trump, which is crazy, but that's how it happened. so that really opened my mind to learn and unlearn the different things that, you know, that have been fed to us. And I started learning about the system and how that system divides us between them and us, and we're better because we're educated, and they're worse because they left and they're being treated like trash. And, you know, like same thing, this thing of work, 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 no, you know, no rest, no nothing, because you need to produce, you need to, you know, seem like a good citizen because you're brown, so you need to do extra, you need to do better than anyone else to even be given a chance. So I learned about that for sure during that time, and that changed my worldview. And that's how I went from doing marketing and business to move into social justice and, you know, equity and diversity consultant.
Thank you, Linda. And I meant to ask, so, well, it's kind of tied to what I asked, but so what do you do and what are your beliefs?
So now what I believe is that you shouldn't need a religion to be a good person. You should be a good person because it's the right thing to do. And I mean, if you want to be part of a religion, I totally get it, you know, like it's community, you know, but the moment that a religion is telling you to, that is dividing you from other people, or telling you that some people are terrible and some people are better, and, you know, that these people are sinners, and then it's like, we're all sinners. Like we're all, you know, like no one is perfect. So you should be a good human because it's the right thing to do. And if you want to have a religion, then make sure that your religion follows that path, that, you know, if there is a deity, a God, a higher power, they will never divide, you know, they will love everyone equally, and they will want everyone to have a good life, you know, and not some living in the street and some living in palaces. So that's a very firm belief that I have now, that I will never join any religion that is asking me to discriminate against a certain group of people. Mm-mm. And, you know, after my time in California, I moved to Washington State, and I met an amazing group of women that were working so hard to bring, you know, equity, diversity, and inclusion to the school system where I was, and to the local government. And I became part of that because I lived in a predominantly white area, and I felt like isolated from, you know, people who looked like me. So joining that community was amazing for me. They saw the real me, they saw my potential, they encouraged me to be unapologetically me. And that's when I saw what they were doing. I said, like, this is what I really want to do. Like, this is, I think I've always been wanting to make a difference, you know, it's been always part of me. But seeing really how what they did made like a transcends, you know, any, like it can really make a big difference in people's lives. That's where I was like, okay, that's what I want to do.
And Linda, I asked you this question on the Spanish version of the episode, but because I know that as a social justice worker, like it can be very difficult, like mentally and physically, like you can burn out from all the injustice that you come across. So how do you, like, what do you do to find balance and not burn yourself out and not give up for the cause that you care so much about?
That is a really good question, and it's a real struggle. Doing this work, there's a lot of unlearning and there's a lot of learning. And one of the things that you learn is that, you know, like racism and, you know, patriarchy and misogyny and all that, it's not one person or a group of people who do that, and that's why the world is like that. But you learn that it's a whole system that has perpetuated the injustices for years and years and years and years and years. So when you learn that, and you kind of like learn how to identify it and how to call it, so you see it everywhere. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting because you're like, you're watching a show and you're like, oh, that's not cool. That shouldn't be happening in 2022. Like it's just it's hard to kind of like, because it's not a job, it's a way of life. It's a way of life. That's clear to me. It's not only a job. Yes, it's what I do, but it's a way of life. So it is very important that, one, you take breaks. You take breaks from social media, news, and things like that when you need it. When you feel that you're overwhelmed, it's very important to take breaks. The world will still be there, and the injustices will still be there, unfortunately. Two, that you have a community of people that either do the same or they don't, but they're willing to listen to you. But to be honest, like, they don't have to do the same, but they have to be kind of like in the knowledge of this work, even if they don't do that for a living. Because when you kind of like decompress and you talk to them, they won't feel attacked, or they won't feel that you're attacking them personally or whatever, but they will understand, and they will comfort you, they will cheer you up, they will, because in this work you will get a lot of no's, like either from organizations, from groups, you're going to get a lot of no's. So you need people to lift you up when you get the no's. And when you get the yes, which is amazing, because real change, you will change either employees' lives or people's lives or youth lives, then they will, like party with you and enjoy this big win. Like even the little wins can be big for people. So it's very, very important to keep this, a forefront, to take care of yourself at the forefront, because the real burnout, definitely, it's something that happens a lot for consultants or professionals who do EDI. And then a lot of them stop doing it because of that. And the system counts on that.
That is insane. But I'm glad that you have your like different activities that you do or prefer not to do in order to take care of yourself.
It's a struggle, I have to say. I'm speaking big game now, but sometimes I'm like, my husband is like, you're looking really, can you please take a break? And I'm like, I don't need a break. But yeah, it is really important. It's a struggle. Everyone will tell you, because you feel that the work is so much that if you take a break, it's going to get worse, right? But there will always someone be there to keep the work going. So it's important.
And Linda, talking about challenges, I meant to ask, what has been your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Definitely the biggest challenge has been to stay true to myself. And I realized that I lost a lot of myself with all my moves. I moved Canada, Mexico, then Canada again, then California, then Washington State, and now Canada again in Ontario. So the need of fitting in, the need to belong somewhere, even where you don't really belong, if you're true to yourself, it's big, right? Like kind of like a survival mode, like you need to belong somewhere. And I noticed that happened a lot. It happened, like, I think the biggest part for me was in California. Like I needed to fit in, and I definitely feel that I lost a lot of myself. And then when I moved to Washington State, which is hilarious because it was like the whitest area that I lived in, I found this group of people of color that saw right through that and pulled the real me out and cherish the real me out and empower the real me out. And that's priceless. Like I can't put a price on that. I will, like, these people are my people, like, and they're from all over, and they're every race under the sun. But they remind me that I don't need to settle for less than who I am, and what I am and who I am is amazing, and it's important, and it's needed, and my talents are needed. And yeah, it's very empowering, and it was a wake-up call for sure. And how easy it was to kind of like blend for a while. It was easy just to but then I did feel that something was missing, that I wasn't 100% happy. And I was like, what? I couldn't put my finger on it until I moved to Washington State, and these people helped me, bring back Linda.
That is beautiful. And Linda, I have another question. So, what has motivated you, or what motivates you?
I think what motivates me now is just to make a real difference in people's lives, to leave the day I leave this earth, that it will be better than before I was here. That's why mentorship for me is so important. To build community is so important, because helping each other, that is how we make things better. Not just looking out for oneself, but to looking out for the community. And I think that's one of the lessons that we learn in this pandemic. We need each other. Like, even if I'm vaccinated, if another person is not vaccinated, this pandemic is not going to end, right? So, like, these little lessons that, well, not little, actually huge lessons that the pandemic taught us, I'm hoping that we learn. But I think that, like, humans are the one thing that, we are not so great at. We forget very easily. We forget, that's why I love to learn and unlearn history. I want to learn the true history, because it will show us our good moments and our bad moments and our mistakes and how we can do better. So yes, helping people, that's what motivates me. Making a difference, that's what motivates me.
Thank you, Linda. And I meant to ask, I know like you want to help people and make the world better, and those are some of your like motivations. And I meant to ask, what are your goals? Like, those are also goals, right? But I meant to ask you, yeah, if there are any other plans that you have for the future.
So right now, my number one is to keep discovering, exploring this Linda, who, kind of like lost her a little bit. And now, I'm back with her, and I want to have this long lasting romance with her. So that's my number one priority right now, this acceptance of the good, the bad, medium, everything in between, and because that's the only way you can love other people, right? If you love yourself, that's the only way you can give. You can't give what you don't have. If you don't have love for yourself, you can't love other people. And that's my number one goal and priority, this love romance with myself. And second, when talking about more like a career or what of my plans to do for the community next, is one of the things that I noticed when I moved back to Canada is that people, the average Canadian, have no idea there's actually millions of Latinx people in Canada. There's a lot, but nobody knows, because we're all spread out and we're just blending in, like what I did in California. You're just blending in, not making noise. We're just playing nice. We just want to be here to get some of the privileges if we get if we're quiet. So I want to change that. I want to create this community, a national community, where we increase visibility and representation for Latinx people. There's a lot of us here, but nobody knows. So to create opportunities for us, to create workshops, and to bring to the front like issues that our community has and that we don't even know. I was reading the other day that we are like maybe 2% of the population of Canada, maybe more, because it said when the census is done, is not done properly for Latinx people. But anyway, let's say around 2 or 3% of the Canadian population, and 19% of Latinx people died of COVID. 19% when we're only 2% of the population. So those are the things that are not talked about. The pay gap of Latina women, it's huge. Nobody knows, nobody talks about it. So all these things, we can't fix things if we don't talk about it, if we don't know about it. And for that, we need to form community. And that's what I want to do with my partner, Ana Maria. She's in Montreal, I'm in Ontario. We want to create this Latinx community for women and non-binary people to create more representation and take space in Canada.
That's really awesome. And you said that you're going to launch the organization in September, right?
That's what we're trying to do. Well, let's see. It's a big goal, but we're trying to do that.
Yeah, make sure to share us the information. So
I will for sure.
And Linda, I meant to ask, because you told me too that you are a mentor for young people. Like I mentioned that in the intro. So I meant to ask, what would you say to today's 20-somethings who, may feel lost or stuck, or even that they think they know everything and that the world owes to them? So like, what would you say to all of those 20-somethings that are waiting to take on the world?
Well, the number one thing, as I said, is love yourself. Love yourself, the good, the bad, the in-betweens, because that's the only way that you can give anything back. Like sometimes we think that we have no talents, like, oh, I don't know, I'm an average person, I have no talent. That's not true. That's the system talking to you and trying to bring you down. You are worthy. You have everything you need to be an amazing person and to succeed. That the system won't allow it, that's a different story. But talking to yourself, you should always tell yourself, you are worthy, you're amazing, your talents are needed, the world needs you, your community needs you, and what you can bring, only you can bring. That hands down. 2, if you already love yourself a lot, you believe all these things, then the second thing that you need to do is like, what are the privileges that the world and the system is giving me? Like, what do I take for granted every day? And use that to help the people who are being marginalized. You will never have a biggest satisfaction in your life to know that you've made a difference. Like, you can have all the money in the world and all the purses in the world, whatever is your thing. Nothing will make you as happy as to know that you made even a little small difference in someone's life, right? So do that, like you have, and never think that it's too late to do anything. Never is too late to start anything. If you think that what you're doing right now, you don't love it, you can change that. It's never too late to start over, to do something new, to do something that you love.
Yeah, I love that too. And Linda, I have one more question. And yeah, it's basically, is there anything that you'd like to share that you think it's important and I didn't ask?
Yes, and I should have said that to young people. Politics. Politics are super important, even when they're boring. And like, I get it. When I was 25, I did not want to know anything about politics. It's gross. Like, they're just old people, like being ridiculous and things like that. But unfortunately, that affects us all, especially young people. The people who think it's not getting affected by politics is really affected by politics, right? And sometimes we let things happen to us when we're not paying attention. And you don't have to be in political science or anything like that. Just pick a lane that you're interested in, that is important for you, and make sure to follow, information about that, to make sure that you're not going to be affected negatively, or a community, a big part of the community is going to get affected. Like I was talking before about Brexit, right? Like young people, when Brexit happened, were like, but why? But it's like, you didn't vote. Older people voted and they wanted that. So you can't complain that now. If you think your vote doesn't count, you're mistaken. There is the system telling you this, so you don't vote. So it is very, very important to vote. It's very, very important to look at the candidates and to see who's going to be the best candidate for the marginalized communities. Because when marginalized communities do better, we all do better. When people with disabilities do better, we all do better. When Black and Indigenous people do better, we all do better. So please pay attention to politics.
Thank you so much, Linda. I really loved learning about your experience, and I'm sure that this will be very helpful for a lot of people. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I don't think so. Thank you so much for this. This is great. I think it's been very useful for me to go back and think about what are the things that I was doing at 25, how I have changed. Just looking at the photos, I was texting my girlfriends in Mexico, and I was on one of my best friends is like, I need to find a photo of me when I was 25. I don't know where I put it. I moved so many times. And she came through and she sent me some, and it was just so nice to see and go back to memory lane. It's just hilarious, and you see how much you've grown and how much you've done. So thank you for that.
Thank you for being here. It's an honor, and keep us posted regarding the organization.
Yes, we don't even have a name yet, but I will definitely let you know.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the episode or you think it will be helpful for someone, feel free to share. You can also find the written stories at medium.com/project25. If you know someone who would like to share their experience being 25, you can send me a message at the email that's on the episode description or through our social media channels, which are also listed on the episode description. Thank you for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.